The stagecoach wheels kicked up dust along the sun-baked trail as Willow O'Connor clutched her letter of promise in trembling hands. The journey west had been arduous, each jolt of the coach sending sharp pain through her damaged hip, a bitter reminder of the childhood fever that had left her with a permanent limp. But the promise of a new life in Black Hawk, Colorado Territory, 1872, had given her courage to leave behind the whispers and pitying glances of Boston society. "Last stop, Black Hawk," the driver called, his voice carrying over the clatter of hooves and the creaking of wooden wheels. Willow smoothed her gray traveling dress, carefully tucking a strand of auburn hair beneath her bonnet. 22 years old and traveling across the country to marry a man she'd never met. The thought both terrified and thrilled her. Thomas Benson had sounded kind in his letters, describing his successful mercantile and the comfortable home he'd built, promising she would want for nothing as his wife. The coach lurched to a halt in front of a dusty main street lined with wooden buildings. Black Hawk had grown rapidly since gold was discovered in the nearby mountains, but it still maintained the raw, unfinished feel of a frontier town. Men in dusty clothes and women in practical calico moved purposefully along the boardwalks, while the occasional well-dressed businessman suggested the town's growing prosperity. "Need help down, miss?" the driver asked, opening the door. "Yes, thank you," Willow replied, bracing herself for the moment he would notice her disability. His eyes flickered briefly to her leg as she shifted to the edge of the seat, but his expression remained neutral as he offered his arm. Willow was grateful for his discretion as she carefully navigated the steps down from the coach, wincing slightly when her right foot touched the ground. The familiar ache intensified after the long journey. A small crowd had gathered near the stagecoach, and Willow scanned the faces anxiously, looking for the man who matched the description Thomas had provided. A tall figure stepped forward, wearing a fine suit that seemed at odds with the frontier setting. His neatly trimmed beard framed a handsome but severe face. "Miss O'Connor?" he inquired, hat in hand. "Yes, Mr. Benson," Willow smiled, hope rising in her chest. The man nodded stiffly. "I am Thomas Benson." Willow extended her hand, which he took briefly. His eyes traveled from her face down to her feet, and his expression shifted subtly. She recognized that look, the careful assessment, the quick calculations, the disappointment. "Your letters didn't mention any physical impairment," he said quietly, still standing far enough away that others couldn't hear. Willow felt heat rise to her cheeks. I suppose I should have mentioned it. The childhood fever left me with—" "I'm sorry, Miss O'Connor," Thomas interrupted, taking a step back. "This simply won't do. I need a wife who can manage a household, entertain business associates, and eventually bear children. Someone whole." The word struck Willow like a physical blow. She had heard it before, of course, whispered behind hands at social gatherings in Boston, but never so baldly stated to her face. "I assure you, Mr. Benson, I am quite capable. I've made my decision," he said firmly, already turning away. "The return coach leaves tomorrow morning. I'll arrange your passage." He hesitated, seeming to remember something approaching decency. "There's a boarding house down the street. I'll settle your bill for the night." With that, he walked away, leaving Willow standing alone beside her trunk, surrounded by curious onlookers who had witnessed her rejection. She blinked rapidly, determined not to cry in front of strangers, though her throat burned with the effort. "Folks ain't got nothing better to do than gawk." A deep voice called out, causing the small crowd to disperse quickly. Willow turned to find a tall man approaching. Unlike Thomas Benson's citified appearance, this man was unmistakably a product of the frontier. His broad shoulders strained against a simple cotton shirt, rolled up at the sleeves to reveal sun-bronzed forearms. A worn leather vest, faded denims, and scuffed boots completed his attire. A cowboy hat cast shadows over eyes that seemed to hold the same blue as the Colorado sky. "Owen Reed," he introduced himself, tipping his hat. "Town Marshal here in Black Hawk." "Willow O'Connor," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt, "though I suppose I'll be returning east tomorrow." Marshal Reed's gaze flicked briefly to her leg, then back to her face without a trace of the pity or dismissal she had come to expect. "That's so?" he asked, his voice neutral. "Benson's a fool, if you don't mind my saying." A small, surprised laugh escaped her. "I appreciate the sentiment, Marshal, but I find myself without prospects and with limited funds. Returning east seems my only option." Owen Reed considered her for a moment, his weathered face thoughtful beneath the shadow of his hat. "Might be other options. Town's growing. The schoolteacher just left to get married. Doc Henderson's been looking for someone to help keep his records and assist with patients." Willow felt a flicker of hope, quickly tempered by reality. "That's kind of you, Marshal, but I'm afraid my condition tends to make people uncomfortable." The Marshal's expression hardened slightly. "Folks around here judge by what a person can do, not how they do it." He gestured to her trunk. "Let me help you to the boarding house. We can figure things out from there." "I can manage," Willow began, her pride wounded enough for one day. "I don't doubt it, Miss O'Connor," he interrupted, "but that trunk looks heavy, and I was raised to offer assistance when it might be welcome." Willow hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you, Marshal." As they started walking toward the boarding house, Willow's limp became more pronounced after the long journey. Each step sent pain shooting through her hip, but she gritted her teeth, determined not to show weakness. Owen noticed her struggle but said nothing until they reached a particularly rutted section of the street. Without warning, he set down the trunk and turned to her. "This street's a mess after yesterday's rain. Mind if I carry you across?" Willow stared at him, taken aback by the straightforward offer made without pity or condescension. "I couldn't possibly. It's no trouble," he said simply. Then, with a slight smile that softened his weathered features, he added, "I'll carry you." Something in those words, in the matter-of-fact way he said them, broke through Willow's carefully constructed defenses. Here was a man offering help not because he thought her incapable, but because he saw a practical problem with a practical solution. "Very well," she agreed quietly. With surprising gentleness, Owen lifted her into his arms. Willow stiffened momentarily, unused to such contact, before relaxing slightly against the solid warmth of his chest. He carried her across the muddy section with steady strides, his breathing barely changing under her weight. "There we are," he said, carefully setting her down on solid ground before retrieving her trunk. "Boarding house is just ahead." As they approached the neat two-story building, Willow found herself stealing glances at the Marshal. He wasn't handsome in the conventional way Thomas Benson had been, but there was something compelling about his face, the lines at the corners of his eyes that suggested he smiled more often than he frowned. The straight nose that had clearly been broken at least once, the strong jaw partially hidden by a few days' growth of beard. Mrs. Peterson, the boarding house proprietor, was a plump, cheerful woman who welcomed Willow warmly, making no comment about her limp. When Owen explained the situation in low tones, her expression darkened briefly. "Thomas Benson's a good businessman but a poor judge of character," she declared loudly enough for Willow to hear. "You're welcome here as long as you need, dear." After ensuring Willow was settled, Owen tipped his hat. "I'll ask around town about those opportunities I mentioned. Perhaps you join me for supper tomorrow to discuss them. The cafe across the street serves decent food." "That would be lovely, thank you," Willow replied, surprised by his continued interest in helping her. After he left, Mrs. Peterson showed Willow to a small but clean room overlooking the main street. "Don't you worry about a thing, Miss O'Connor. Black Hawk's full of good people who'll see your worth quick enough." Alone at last, Willow sank onto the bed and finally allowed herself to cry. The tears came not just from humiliation and disappointment, but from relief that perhaps all was not lost after all. And if her thoughts strayed repeatedly to a pair of kind blue eyes and the strong arms that had carried her so effortlessly, she attributed it to nothing more than gratitude. Owen Reed walked slowly back to his office, his thoughts occupied by the red-haired woman with the determined green eyes and graceful dignity. Benson was indeed a fool, but Owen wasn't entirely sorry about that fact. There was something about Willow O'Connor that had caught his interest, immediately a strength that had nothing to do with physical capability. His deputy, Jimmy Parker, looked up from his desk as Owen entered. "Saw you helping that lady from the stage. New in town." "Mail order bride," Owen replied, hanging his hat on the rack. Benson took one look at her limp and backed out of the arrangement. Jimmy let out a low whistle. "Cold-hearted business, that. What'll she do now?" "I'm hoping we can find her a reason to stay," Owen said, more determined than he'd expected to feel about the matter. "She deserves better than to be sent back east with her pride wounded." "And it don't hurt that she's mighty pretty," Jimmy observed with a knowing grin. Owen gave his deputy a warning look. "That's not the point." "Course not, Marshal," Jimmy replied, failing entirely to look convinced. "Just observing that your chivalry seems a mite more enthusiastic than usual." Owen didn't dignify that with a response, turning his attention to the stack of wanted posters on his desk. But he couldn't deny, even to himself, that Jimmy wasn't entirely wrong. There was something about Willow O'Connor that had stirred feelings. He thought long dormant feelings he wasn't sure he was ready to acknowledge. The next morning, Willow woke early, having decided during a restless night that she would not meekly board the eastbound stagecoach. Marshal Reed's suggestions had kindled a spark of hope, and she was determined to explore every possibility before admitting defeat. After dressing in her second-best dress, a modest blue cotton with white piping, she made her way downstairs for breakfast. Mrs. Peterson was already bustling about the dining room, setting places for her boarders. "Good morning, Miss O'Connor. Sleep well?" the landlady asked. "As well as could be expected, thank you," Willow replied honestly. "Marshal Reed stopped by earlier," Mrs. Peterson informed her, placing a steaming cup of coffee before Willow. "Asked me to tell you the stagecoach has been delayed due to a bridge washout. Won't be leaving for at least 3 days." Willow wasn't sure whether to be relieved or anxious about this news. "I see. Did he mention anything else?" "Just that he's arranged for you to meet Doc Henderson at 10 o'clock if you're amenable, and he'll still come by at supper time as planned." Mrs. Peterson's eyes twinkled knowingly. "He's a good man, our Marshal. Never seen him take such an interest in a newcomer before." "He's simply being kind," Willow protested, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. Hum," Mrs. Peterson responded noncommittally, her expression suggesting she thought otherwise. "Doc's office is just 3 buildings down from here on the same side of the street. Can't miss it." After a breakfast of eggs and biscuits, Willow gathered her courage and set out for her meeting with the doctor. The morning air was crisp, the sun already warming the dusty street. She was acutely aware of curious glances from townspeople, but she held her head high, focusing on placing one foot carefully in front of the other. Dr. Henderson's office was indeed easy to find, with a neat sign proclaiming medical services hanging above the door. Willow took a deep breath and knocked. The door was opened by a thin, elderly man with spectacles and a shock of white hair. "Yes, can I help you, Dr. Henderson? I'm Willow O'Connor. Marshal Reed arranged for me to meet with you about a possible position." Recognition dawned on the doctor's face. "Ah, yes. Please come in, Miss O'Connor. Owen mentioned you might be interested in assisting me." Willow followed him into a tidy waiting room. "I don't have medical training, doctor, but I'm educated and learn quickly." "Doctor." Henderson waved a hand dismissively. "Medical knowledge can be taught. What I need is someone organized, literate, and good with people. My handwriting is atrocious, my filing system non-existent, and my bedside manner has been described as brusque by those being kind." Despite her nervousness, Willow smiled. "I see. Well, I can certainly help with organization and record keeping, and I've been told I have a calming presence." "Excellent," the doctor gestured for her to sit. "Now, Owen mentioned you have some mobility limitations. How does that affect your daily activities?" Willow appreciated his direct approach. "I walk with a limp due to hip damage from childhood fever. I can manage most tasks, though standing for very long periods becomes painful. Stairs can be challenging on bad days." Dr. Henderson nodded thoughtfully. "Nothing that would interfere with the work here. My examination room and office are on this level, and I rarely need assistance with physically demanding tasks." They spoke for nearly an hour, discussing the details of the position. By the time Willow left, she had secured a job as doctor. Henderson's assistant, starting the following Monday with a reasonable salary and lodging included in a small room attached to the office. Her spirits lifted considerably. Willow decided to explore the town. Black Hawk was bustling with activity miners coming down from the hills, merchants hawking their wares, ladies in practical frontier dress going about their shopping. The settlement had grown rapidly from a mining camp to a proper town, with wooden boardwalks fronting an assortment of businesses along the main street. Willow paused outside the mercantile, curious about the establishment Thomas Benson owned. Through the window, she could see him attending to a customer, his manner stiff and formal. Part of her wanted to enter to show him she hadn't fled town in shame, but pride kept her moving past. "Miss O'Connor." Willow turned to see a young woman hurrying toward her, smiling broadly. She didn't recognize her but returned the smile politely. "I'm Violet Cooper," the woman introduced herself. "Mrs. Peterson mentioned you're staying at the boarding house. I work at the millinery shop." She gestured to a nearby storefront with colorful hats displayed in the window. "Pleased to meet you," Willow replied, surprised by the friendly overture. "Some of us ladies are having tea this afternoon at Mrs. Peterson's. Would you care to join us?" Violet asked. "It's nothing formal, just a chance to socialize a bit." Touched by the invitation, Willow nodded. "I'd like that very much, thank you." "Wonderful. 2:00. Violet glanced down the street. "Oh, and here comes the marshal. Been asking all over town about opportunities for you, he has." She winked conspiratorially before hurrying back to her shop. Owen approached with long, easy strides. Today he wore a clean shirt beneath his vest and his badge gleamed in the sunlight. "Miss O'Connor, out exploring our little town?" "Yes, and I've just had a very productive meeting with Dr. Henderson," Willow informed him, unable to keep the excitement from her voice. "He's offered me a position as his assistant." Owen's face broke into a genuine smile that transformed his rugged features. "That's excellent news. Henderson's a fine doctor, if a bit abrupt. Your presence will likely double his patients." "I don't know about that," Willow laughed, "but I'm grateful for the opportunity." "Still planning to join me for supper?" Owen asked, suddenly looking almost boyishly uncertain. "I wouldn't miss it," Willow assured him, "though now it will be a celebration rather than a strategy session." Owen tipped his hat. "Looking forward to it, Miss O'Connor. I should get back to my rounds, but I'll collect you at 6. As he walked away, Willow found herself watching his retreating figure with more interest than was strictly proper. There was something about Owen Reed that drew her: his straightforward manner, his quiet strength, the respect he commanded without demanding it. The afternoon tea at Mrs. Peterson's proved to be a delightful affair. Besides Violet and Mrs. Peterson, Willow met Sarah Johnson, the banker's wife, Elizabeth Taylor, who ran the town's small library, and Hannah Miller, a widow who operated a successful bakery. The women were warm and welcoming, asking about Willow's background and sharing town gossip without prying too deeply into her situation. When Violet mentioned that Willow would be dining with Marshal Reed that evening, there were knowing glances and suppressed smiles that made Willow blush. "Owen Reed is the most eligible bachelor in Black Hawk," Sarah informed her with a mischievous smile. "Half the unmarried ladies in town have set their caps for him, but he's never shown much interest." "It's not like that," Willow protested. "He's simply being kind to a stranger." "Owen is kind," Elizabeth agreed, "but he doesn't usually escort ladies to dinner. He's been cautious since his fiancée died 5 years ago." Willow's eyebrows rose in surprise. "I had no idea. Influenza took her," Mrs. Peterson explained gently. "Hit the town hard that winter." Owen was beside himself, couldn't save her, despite riding through a blizzard to fetch medicine from Central City. "How terrible," Willow murmured, her heart aching for the pain he must have endured. "He's a good man who deserves happiness," Hannah said, her own experience with loss evident in her voice. "Just tread carefully with his heart if you're not planning to stay." The conversation moved on to other topics, but Willow remained thoughtful. She had no intention of breaking anyone's heart, least of all her own. She'd come west seeking marriage and stability, not romance. Yet she couldn't deny the flutter in her stomach when she thought of dining with Owen that evening. At precisely 6 o'clock, Owen arrived at the boarding house. He'd cleaned up further, his dark hair still damp from washing, and had donned a clean shirt and string tie beneath his vest. The effect was striking without being overdressed for the frontier town. "Good evening, Miss O'Connor," he greeted her, hat in hand. "Good evening, Marshal," she replied, suddenly feeling shy. "And please call me Willow." A small smile curved his lips. "Willow, then, and I'm Owen, at least when I'm not on official business." The cafe across the street was simple but clean, with checkered cloths covering the tables and kerosene lamps providing a warm glow as evening approached. The proprietor, a jovial man named Carlo Martinelli, greeted Owen with familiarity and showed them to a corner table with a flourish. "Best table for the Marshal and his beautiful companion," Carlo declared, his Italian accent still strong despite years in America. "Special stew tonight, very good." After they were seated, Owen seemed almost nervous, turning his water glass slowly. "I'm glad you found a position with Doc Henderson. He's a good man, despite his gruff manner." "Yes, I think we'll work well together," Willow replied. "Thank you for suggesting it. I wasn't ready to admit defeat and return east." "Defeat?" Owen raised an eyebrow. "Is that how you saw it?" Willow considered the question honestly. "Yes, coming west was an act of courage for me. Going back would have felt like failure." "Why did you decide to become a mail-order bride?" Owen asked, his direct gaze making it clear he wanted a real answer, not a polite evasion. Willow sighed softly. "Limited options, primarily. My parents died 3 years ago, leaving me with little money. I worked as a companion to an elderly lady until her death last year. After that," she shrugged, "society has little use for unmarried women with physical imperfections." Owen's expression darkened. "There's nothing imperfect about you. The simple statement delivered with such conviction caught Willow off guard. That's very kind, but it's not kindness, it's truth," Owen interrupted gently. "You walk differently. That doesn't make you less." Willow felt tears threatening and blinked them away. No one had ever stated it so plainly, so matter-of-factly, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Their food arrived, saving her from having to respond immediately. Carlo served them generous portions of savory stew with crusty bread, along with a bottle of wine on the house for the Marshal's special guest. As they ate, the conversation shifted to lighter topics. Owen told her about growing up on a ranch in Texas, coming north after the war, and eventually becoming Marshal of Black Hawk 3 years earlier. Willow shared stories of her childhood in Boston, her love of books, and her brief experience teaching before caring for her parents during their final illnesses. "You miss Texas?" she asked as they finished their meal. Owen considered the question. "Sometimes. Miss the open spaces, the big sky. But Black Hawk's become home. Good people here, building something that will last." "It seems a friendly place," Willow agreed. "Everyone has been so welcoming." "Frontier towns need good people more than established cities do," Owen said. "Out here, what you can contribute matters more than where you came from or what you look like." As they walked back to the boarding house after dinner, the evening air had turned cooler, stars emerging in the darkening sky above the mountain town. Owen offered his arm, which Willow gratefully accepted. The support made walking easier, and she found herself enjoying the solid warmth of him beside her. "Will you stay in Black Hawk now?" Owen asked as they reached Mrs. Peterson's porch. Willow nodded. "Yes, I believe I will, Doctor. Henderson's offer is a good one, and I like it here." "I'm glad," Owen said simply, his eyes meeting hers in the lamplight spilling from the boarding house windows. For a moment, Willow thought he might say something more, perhaps even kiss her hand in parting. Instead, he simply tipped his hat. "Good night, Willow. Sleep well." "Good night, Owen, and thank you for everything." As she watched him walk away, Willow acknowledged to herself that her interest in the Marshal went beyond gratitude. But she wouldn't rush headlong into feelings she barely understood. She had come west seeking security, and now she had found it in an unexpected way. Anything more would need time to develop naturally. What she didn't realize was how little time it would take. Over the next week, Willow settled into her new life in Black Hawk with surprising ease. Dr. Henderson proved to be an excellent employer, appreciative of her organizational skills and gentle way with patients. By Wednesday, she had moved into the small room adjacent to the doctor's office, a cozy space with its own entrance and a tiny stove for heat. Owen stopped by regularly, sometimes on official business checking on patients, other times with transparent excuses that made Dr. Henderson roll his eyes knowingly. Each visit left Willow more drawn to the Marshal's quiet strength and unexpected gentleness. On Friday evening, Owen invited her to attend a social at the town hall the following night. "Nothing fancy," he assured her. "Music, some dancing, refreshments." "The whole town turns out," Willow hesitated. "Dancing might be difficult for me." "There's plenty besides dancing," Owen said, "and if you do want to dance." He paused, a slight flush visible beneath his tan. "I'd be honored to partner with you at whatever pace suits you best." His consideration touched her deeply. "In that case, I'd be delighted to attend." Saturday evening found Willow nervously preparing for the social. She wore her best dress, a sage green that complemented her auburn hair, which she had arranged in a simple but elegant style. Mrs. Peterson had loaned her a pretty shawl with embroidered flowers. Owen arrived promptly, looking handsome in a clean white shirt, dark vest, and his best denims. His usually tousled dark hair was neatly combed, though one stubborn lock already curled over his forehead. "You look beautiful," he said simply when she opened the door. "Thank you," Willow replied, feeling a blush warm her cheeks. "You're quite handsome yourself." The town hall was already filled with people when they arrived. Lanterns and candles provided cheerful illumination, and several local musicians were setting up their instruments on a small stage. Tables along one wall held an impressive array of food and drink, contributed by townspeople. Willow was introduced to dozens of residents, all of whom greeted her warmly. She was touched by how many people mentioned appreciating improvements at Dr. Henderson's office since her arrival. "Already making your mark on our town," Owen commented with evident pride after one such exchange. When the music began, Owen didn't immediately suggest dancing, seeming to understand her nervousness. Instead, they enjoyed the music and conversation, watching as couples took to the open area in the center of the hall. During a lively tune, little Emma Taylor, Elizabeth's 5-year-old daughter, approached Willow shyly. "Miss O'Connor, will you dance with me?" she asked, her small face earnest. "Mama says you walk special like my cousin Daisy, and Daisy loves to dance with me." Willow's heart melted at the innocent request. "I'd be honored, Miss Emma." With Emma's small hand in hers, Willow moved to the edge of the dance area. Her limp was pronounced after a long day, but she found she could sway to the music and twirl Emma without too much discomfort. The little girl giggled with delight, completely unconcerned with Willow's awkward movements. When the tune ended, Emma hugged her impulsively before skipping back to her mother. Willow turned to find Owen watching her, a soft expression on his face that made her heart skip. He approached slowly, extending his hand. "May I have this dance?" he asked as the musicians began a gentle waltz. "I'm not very graceful," Willow warned, even as she placed her hand in his. "Grace comes in many forms," Owen replied. "Just follow my lead and we'll find our own rhythm." And somehow they did. Owen's strong arm supported her firmly around the waist, taking weight off her bad hip. He moved deliberately, finding a pace that accommodated her limitations without making her feel self-conscious. They couldn't manage the flowing turns other couples executed, but their simple box step felt no less beautiful to Willow. "Thank you," she whispered as they moved together. "I haven't danced since before my illness." "The pleasure is mine," Owen responded, his blue eyes warm with an emotion Willow was beginning to recognize as more than mere friendship. As the evening progressed, they danced twice more, each time with increasing confidence. Between dances, they mingled with townspeople, and Willow was touched by how many made a point of telling her they were glad she had decided to stay in Black Hawk. "You've made quite an impression in a short time," Owen commented as they shared a piece of Hannah Miller's apple pie. "Everyone has been so kind," Willow replied. "It's different from Boston. There, my limp defined me in people's eyes. Here, it seems almost incidental." "That's the frontier for you," Owen said. "People are judged by their character and contributions, not their physical capabilities. Though I won't pretend prejudice doesn't exist here too." The honesty of his assessment was refreshing. Willow had encountered enough false platitudes in her life to appreciate his straightforward approach. As the evening wound down, Owen escorted her back to her new quarters behind the doctor's office. The night air was cool but not uncomfortable, the stars brilliant above the mountain town. At her door, Owen seemed reluctant to leave. "I had a wonderful time tonight," he said, still holding her hand. "So did I," Willow admitted softly. "Thank you for persuading me to attend." Owen hesitated, then slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away, raised her hand to his lips. The gentle kiss sent a pleasant shiver through her. "Good night," Willow," he murmured, releasing her hand reluctantly. "Good night, Owen," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. Inside her room, Willow leaned against the closed door, her heart racing. She had come to Colorado seeking security through marriage to a stranger. Instead, she found herself developing genuine feelings for a man who seemed to see beyond her disability to the woman beneath. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. The following weeks saw Willow fully integrated into the life of Black Hawk. Her work with Dr. Henderson provided both purpose and a modest income, while her circle of friends expanded steadily. She joined the Ladies' Aid Society, attended church services, and even began helping Elizabeth Taylor at the library one afternoon a week. Thomas Benson avoided her when possible, though their paths occasionally crossed in the small town. He never acknowledged his rejection of her, maintaining a stiff formality on the rare occasions they interacted. Willow found that his behavior bothered her less and less as time passed. Owen remained a constant presence in her life, stopping by the doctor's office daily and escorting her to town events. They developed a comfortable routine of Sunday walks and Wednesday suppers at Carlo's Cafe. Their growing attachment was obvious to everyone in town, though neither had spoken openly of their feelings. One crisp October afternoon, as golden aspen leaves drifted down around them during their Sunday walk, Owen suggested they rest on a bench overlooking the creek that ran along the edge of town. "I've been meaning to ask you something," he began, uncharacteristically nervous. Willow's heart quickened. "Yes, the Harvest Festival is coming up in 2 weeks. I was hoping you would attend with me officially as my sweetheart." The straightforward request brought a smile to Willow's face. "I'd be honored, Owen. I've considered myself your sweetheart for some time now, even without the official designation." Relief and joy spread across Owen's features. "I'm glad to hear that. I've been cautious about pushing forward too quickly." "Because of your fiancé?" Willow asked gently. Surprise flickered in Owen's eyes. "You know about Claire," Mrs. Peterson mentioned it. "I'm sorry for your loss." Owen was quiet for a moment, his gaze on the flowing creek. "It was 5 years ago. The influenza epidemic hit hard that winter. Claire was helping nurse the sick when she fell ill herself." His voice grew rough with remembered pain. "I couldn't save her." Willow placed her hand over his. "I'm sorry. For a long time I couldn't imagine caring for anyone again," Owen continued. "Then you arrived and something changed." He turned to look at her directly. "You have a strength that draws me, Willow, not just in how you've overcome your physical challenges, but in your heart." Touched beyond words, Willow squeezed his hand. "My feelings for you grew so gradually that I hardly noticed until they were simply there, as natural as breathing." Owen's smile was tender as he lifted their joined hands to his lips. "I'd like to court you properly, with your permission." "I believe you've been courting me quite effectively these past weeks," Willow replied with a smile. "But yes, you have my permission." The Harvest Festival transformed Black Hawk into a wonderland of autumn decorations and community celebration. Stalls lined the main street, offering everything from candied apples to handcrafted goods. Games and contests occupied the town square, while tables groaned under the weight of potluck dishes brought by residents. Owen proudly escorted Willow through the festivities, introducing her as my sweetheart with obvious pleasure. The designation brought congratulations from friends and knowing smiles from those who had witnessed their growing attachment. As evening approached, lanterns were lit throughout the town, creating a magical atmosphere. A platform had been erected in the square for dancing, and the local musicians struck up a lively tune. "May I have this dance?" Owen asked, offering his hand with a formal bow that made Willow laugh. "You may, kind sir," she replied, accepting his hand. They had developed their own style of dancing over the past weeks, with Owen's supportive arm allowing Willow to move more freely than she could alone. They couldn't manage the energetic steps of the livelier tunes, but for the slower numbers, they moved together with a grace that came from genuine connection rather than physical prowess. During a break in the music, Owen guided Willow away from the crowd toward a quiet corner near the church. In the golden glow of hanging lanterns, his expression was serious yet tender. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. He withdrew a small wooden box carved with delicate flowers. Inside, nestled on a scrap of velvet, lay a simple silver ring set with a small but perfect sapphire. "It was my mother's," Owen explained softly. "She gave it to me before she passed, said to save it for the woman who captured my heart completely." Willow's breath caught, her eyes moving from the beautiful ring to Owen's face. "I'm not asking for marriage yet," he continued, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "That would be too soon for both of us. But I am asking for a promise that when the time is right, you'll consider becoming my wife." Tears of happiness blurred Willow's vision. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I promise." Owen's face broke into a radiant smile as he slipped the ring onto her right hand, a symbol of intention rather than a formal engagement. Then, with infinite tenderness, he cupped her face in his hands and lowered his lips to hers in a first, gentle kiss that held both passion and promise. When they returned to the festival, the ring on Willow's hand drew immediate notice and a fresh round of congratulations. Even Thomas Benson, after a visible internal struggle, approached to offer stiff, but seemingly sincere good wishes. As the evening wound down, Owen walked Willow home beneath a canopy of stars, his arms secure around her waist, providing support without making her feel dependent. "Are you happy?" he asked as they reached her door. Willow looked up at the man who had first offered to carry her across a muddy street and had ended up carrying her heart as well. "Happier than I ever imagined possible." Owen's kiss goodnight held all the tenderness and passion she could have wished for, a perfect ending to a perfect day. Winter came early to the Colorado mountains that year, blanketing Black Hawk in snow by mid-November. The cold aggravated Willow's hip, making her limp more pronounced, but she refused to let it confine her. Dr. Henderson, noting her increased discomfort, suggested exercises and hot compresses that provided some relief. Owen proved to be attentive without being overprotective, understanding when Willow needed assistance and when she needed independence. On particularly bad days, he would appear with his sleigh to transport her between the doctor's office and various errands, matter-of-factly helping her in and out without making her feel like an invalid. Their courtship deepened through the winter months, with cozy evenings by the fire at Mrs. Peterson's parlor, sleigh rides bundled together beneath warm blankets, and quiet conversations that ranged from childhood memories to dreams for the future. By Christmas, it was generally assumed throughout town that an engagement announcement was imminent. Willow found herself the recipient of knowing smiles and hints about spring weddings from the ladies of the town. The holiday was celebrated with community-wide festivities centered around the church. A towering pine was erected in the square, decorated with handmade ornaments, strings of popcorn and cranberries, and precious candles lit only briefly on Christmas Eve. Owen gifted Willow with a beautiful leather-bound journal and a delicate silver pen. "For recording our story," he explained with a smile. "And for the poetry you mentioned writing in your youth." Willow's gift to him was a hand-knitted scarf in deep blue that matched his eyes, and a framed sketch she had done of his beloved horse, Thunderbolt. "Sarah Johnson taught me to draw," she explained when he expressed amazement at her talent. "I've been practicing in secret for weeks." On New Year's Eve, the town gathered in the church for a watch night service, praying in the new year of 1873 with hope and gratitude. As midnight approached, Owen drew Willow slightly away from the congregation. "I've been patient," he whispered, his eyes warm in the candlelight, "but I can't wait any longer to ask properly." He took both her hands in his. "Willow O'Connor, will you do me the great honor of becoming my wife?" "Yes," Willow replied without hesitation, joy bubbling up inside her. "With all my heart, yes." Their engagement was announced to the congregation moments after the new year began, to cheers and congratulations from the entire town. The spring wedding that had been hinted at for months was now officially being planned, with every lady in Black Hawk offering assistance. Through January and February, Willow divided her time between her duties at the doctor's office and preparations for the wedding. The Ladies' Aid Society insisted on helping with her trousseau, while Hannah Miller declared herself in charge of the wedding cake. Owen, meanwhile, was building an addition to his small house at the edge of town, a ground-floor bedroom and washroom that would eliminate the need for Willow to navigate stairs daily. The thoughtful consideration touched her deeply. "I want our home to be comfortable for you," he explained when she expressed gratitude for his foresight. "Not just tolerable, but truly designed for your needs." On a bright April morning with the scent of pine and mountain wildflowers in the air, Willow O'Connor and Owen Reed were married in the Black Hawk Church, surrounded by friends who had become family. Dr. Henderson proudly walked Willow down the aisle in place of her father, while Jimmy Parker stood as Owen's best man. Willow wore a gown of ivory silk that Elizabeth and Violet had helped design specifically to accommodate her needs, slightly shorter in front to prevent tripping, with hidden supports that eased pressure on her bad hip. The effect was both beautiful and practical, allowing her to walk toward her future husband with confidence. Owen's face, when he saw her coming down the aisle, was everything Willow could have hoped for, a mixture of awe, tenderness, and unwavering love that brought happy tears to her eyes. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, with Reverend William speaking eloquently about love that sees beyond surface appearances to the true heart within. When Owen recited his vows, his voice steady and sure, Willow felt as though her heart might burst with happiness. "I promise to walk beside you always," he concluded, holding her hands firmly in his. "And when the path is rough, I'll carry you, not because you can't manage, but because you shouldn't have to manage alone." Willow's own vows, spoken through tears of joy, promised similar partnership and devotion. "You saw me when others looked away," she said softly. "You offered help without pity, strength without dominance, and love without condition. I promise to be your equal partner in all things, supporting you as steadfastly as you support me." The celebration afterward was joyous, with the entire town turning out to wish the couple well. Even Thomas Benson attended, offering congratulations that seemed, for the first time, genuinely warm. "I was a fool," he admitted quietly to Willow during a moment alone. "I hope you can forgive my shallow judgment." "I've found happiness because of it," Willow replied honestly. "There's nothing to forgive." As evening approached, Owen and Willow departed for a brief honeymoon at a small cabin owned by the Johnsons in the mountains. When they reached the carriage decorated with flowers and ribbons by well-wishers, Owen surprised Willow by sweeping her into his arms. "What are you doing?" she laughed, arms circling his neck. "Carrying my bride," he replied with a grin, before adding in a voice only she could hear, "The first of many times, Mrs. Reed." The townsfolk cheered as Owen carried Willow to the carriage, his strong arms holding her securely against his chest. As they drove away, Willow leaned against her husband's shoulder, marveling at how dramatically her life had changed in less than a year. She had come to Colorado seeking security through marriage to a stranger. Instead, she had found work that utilized her talents, friends who valued her contributions, and a husband who loved her completely, limp and all. The rejection that had seemed devastating on that first day in Black Hawk had led her to greater happiness than she could have imagined. The mountain cabin proved to be the perfect honeymoon retreat, secluded and peaceful, with a breathtaking view of snow-capped peaks. Owen had arranged everything in advance, ensuring the cabin was warm and welcoming upon their arrival, with supplies enough for their week-long stay. Their first night as husband and wife was filled with tender discoveries and passionate affirmation of their love. Owen's gentle consideration of Willow's physical limitations only enhanced the intimacy between them, establishing a pattern of communication and care that would serve them well in the years to come. During their week in the mountains, they talked at length about their hopes for the future. Owen spoke of eventually passing the marshal's badge to Jimmy Parker and expanding the small ranch he had started on land outside town. Willow shared her desire to continue working with Dr. Henderson while perhaps starting a small school for children unable to attend regular classes due to disability or illness. "You'd be wonderful at that," Owen encouraged her. "Your own experience gives you understanding others might lack." "And what about children?" Willow asked hesitantly. "My condition might make childbearing difficult." Owen took her hand, his expression serious. "I want children with you, Willow, but your health and happiness come first. If we're blessed with children, we'll rejoice. If not, we'll find other ways to fill our lives with love." The simple acceptance in his words freed Willow from fears she had harbored since accepting his proposal. Whatever came, they would face it together, as equals in partnership if not in physical ability. Their return to Black Hawk was marked by a quiet settling into married life. The house Owen had prepared for them was comfortable without being ostentatious, with thoughtful touches throughout that made daily tasks easier for Willow without calling attention to her disability. Spring blossomed into summer, and summer faded into autumn. Willow continued working with Dr. Henderson 3 days a week, while using her free time to establish a small program for children with special needs. With encouragement from Elizabeth Taylor, she began offering classes twice weekly at the library for 3 children who struggled with traditional schooling. Owen's duties as marshal kept him busy, though he made a point of being home for supper each evening, sharing the events of his day with his wife and listening attentively to hers. Their partnership deepened through everyday moments, reading together by the fire, tending the small garden behind their home, riding in the hills on Sunday afternoons with Willow securely seated before Owen on Thunderbolt. In late November, as the first snow dusted the mountains, Willow confirmed what she had suspected for several weeks: she was expecting a child. Dr. Henderson estimated the baby would arrive in June, and while he cautioned that her hip condition might complicate the delivery, he was optimistic about her ability to carry the child to term. Owen's joy at the news was tempered only by concern for Willow's well-being. "Are you happy about this?" he asked, searching her face for any sign of fear. "Nervous but very happy," Willow assured him, placing his hand on her still flat abdomen. "Our child, Owen, a little piece of both of us." The winter passed peacefully, with Owen becoming increasingly protective as Willow's pregnancy progressed. By spring, her condition was obvious, her gait more awkward as she adjusted to the changing center of balance. Owen took to carrying her more frequently, especially on the increasingly rare occasions when they ventured beyond their home and the doctor's office. "I can still walk," Willow would protest mildly. "I know you can," Owen would reply with a smile, "but I like carrying you." The truth was, Willow had come to enjoy these moments in her husband's arms, secure in the knowledge that his assistance was offered from love rather than pity. As her June due date approached, the women of Black Hawk rallied around Willow, preparing the nursery, sewing baby clothes, and sharing advice both practical and dubious. Hannah Miller and Mrs. Peterson took turns bringing meals, ensuring Willow didn't have to stand for long periods cooking. On a warm evening in early June, with a gentle rain pattering against the windows, Willow's labor began. Owen sent for Dr. Henderson and Hannah Miller, who had assisted with many births in the town. What followed was 18 hours of difficult labor that tested Willow's strength to its limits. Throughout the ordeal, Owen never left her side, supporting her through contractions, wiping her brow and murmuring encouragement when she felt she couldn't continue. "You're the strongest person I know," he told her during a particularly difficult moment. "You can do this, Willow. I'm right here with you." Just as dawn was breaking on the second day, their son was born, a healthy, robust boy with a strong cry and his father's blue eyes. Dr. Henderson pronounced both mother and child in good health, though he cautioned Willow to rest completely for at least 2 weeks. "We'll name him Samuel, after my father," Willow whispered, cradling the infant in her arms. "Samuel James Reed," Owen agreed, his voice rough with emotion as he gently touched his son's tiny hand. "He's perfect, Willow, just like his mother." The birth of Samuel brought a new dimension to their partnership. Owen took on many tasks traditionally left to mothers, particularly those that required physical exertion Willow couldn't manage while recovering. He showed no hesitation in changing diapers, walking the floor with a fussy infant, or helping Willow position the baby for nursing. By the time Samuel was 3 months old, they had established a rhythm that allowed both parents to care for him while maintaining their other responsibilities. Owen arranged his schedule to be home more, while Willow gradually resumed limited duties at the doctor's office, often with Samuel sleeping peacefully in a basket nearby. The years that followed brought both joys and challenges. Samuel grew into a sturdy, curious child with his father's athletic ability and his mother's thoughtful nature. When he was 3, the family welcomed a daughter, Emma Claire, named for Owen's mother and his first fiancée, a gesture that touched Willow deeply. Emma was born with a slight malformation of her left foot that Dr. Henderson assured them could be largely corrected with special exercises and properly fitted shoes. Rather than dismaying them, Emma's condition only strengthened the family's bond. "She's like me," Willow would say with a smile, showing 4-year-old Samuel how to help his little sister with her exercises. "Special," Owen would agree, gathering his family close, "just like her mama." As the children grew, Willow's small program for students with special needs expanded into a proper school, housed in a building Owen and other townsmen constructed adjacent to the regular schoolhouse. By 1880, Mrs. Reed's academy had 8 regular students and a reputation for innovative teaching methods that attracted visitors from as far away as Denver. Owen eventually passed the marshal's badge to Jimmy Parker, focusing on developing the small ranch outside town while serving on the town council. The Reed family became central to Black Hawk's growth and prosperity, their home a gathering place for community celebrations and quiet assistance to those in need. On a golden autumn afternoon in 1882, Willow sat on the porch of their expanded home, watching Owen teach 9-year-old Samuel to saddle a pony while 6-year-old Emma practiced her reading beside her. Dr. Henderson, now retired but still a frequent visitor, settled into the chair next to Willow's. "Did I ever tell you," the old doctor said conversationally, "that Owen came to me the very morning after you arrived in Black Hawk? Wanted to know everything about your condition, what caused it, what might help, what to avoid that might cause you pain." Willow turned to him in surprise. "No, he never mentioned that." Dr. Henderson smiled. "He was smitten from the first moment, said he'd never seen such dignity in the face of cruelty, wanted to make sure he never added to your burden through ignorance." "He never has," Willow said softly, watching her husband lift Emma onto the pony behind Samuel, his strong hands ensuring both children were secure. 10 years had added silver threads to Owen's dark hair and deepened the lines around his eyes, but his strength remained unwavering, the same strength that had once offered to carry a limping stranger across a muddy street, and had been carrying her in various ways ever since. As if sensing her gaze, Owen looked up and smiled, the love in his eyes as clear and constant as it had been on their wedding day. Willow smiled back, her heart full. She had come west seeking security, and found love instead, a love that saw beyond limitations to possibilities, beyond differences to strengths. In the arms of a man who had promised to carry her when needed and walk beside her always, Willow Reed had found not just a husband, but a true partner in creating a life richer and more meaningful than she could have imagined. And in the end, they carried each other through joys and sorrows, challenges and triumphs, building a legacy of love that would outlast them both.